Hello and welcome to the Juggling Podcast, Patreon exclusive number 11. My name's Luke Burridge, and joining me, of course, like every single time, no guest this week, just our normal co-host, Juliane. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
And it's like Wednesday after the European Juggling Convention 2019.
Yep.
We are still travelling. We are doing some holidaying in the south of England, and we are currently camping. So if you can hear children playing in the background or cars driving past, we can't really do much about soundproofing this time out because we are in a tent still.
A tent. Hopefully it won't start raining again.
If it starts raining, we might have to stop.
Pretty loud.
Yeah, that gets really... But here we go. So there was the Gala Show at the EJC, and we got to the point where we didn't want to talk about it anymore. Two people who had also seen the show, the Gala Show.
Yep.
And the reason why is because we didn't find anybody who had enjoyed themselves watching it or thought it was a good show. Now, it got to the point we didn't want to talk about it because it felt like we were just complaining and other people were just complaining. And people were complaining, and I think quite rightly were complaining. So what I want... Oh, also, when we did a vlog, we recorded an entire vlog about it. We were recording our reactions as the show is going on, when we walked out of the show, when we walked back into the show, during the break, we were always kind of saying what was going on and what we were feeling. And then afterwards, we did a wrap-up. So I actually have like a 9 minutes worth of vlog about the Gala Show.
Right.
Which could be edited and released. You know, it's like kind of ready to go, like it's all there. But in the end, we decided, no, we're not going to do that because we didn't want the final vlog, you know, of the final day, the last day of the convention to be wrapped up just by complaining and like the negativity. So we decided, let's cut out all the negativity from the vlog and instead put it here in the Patreon feed. Well, not really.
No,
but here's the thing.
This is not going to be all just negative.
No, it isn't complaining. So what we actually want to do, we think we understand a lot of the decisions that were made in good faith, like good decisions that in isolation or for a different show and for various different reasons were made, which would have been good decisions, but ended up compounding all of these individual good decisions compounding into making the show a bad show, like the worst Gala show I've ever seen at the EJC.
Make it a worse show that it could have maybe been.
Yes, but I'm saying
know.
Like if it had been, let me put it this way, if it had been a normal EJC Gala show and one of these decisions would have been made, you'd been like, oh, that was a pity. That was a pity. That was a little bit bad, but overall it was fine because everything. But the thing is, it's sort of like at every turn these decisions were made, and that makes and like I say, each one of them made in good faith. Each one of them, like in itself, like a good sounding decision. Put them all together, it becomes the worst Gala Show I've ever seen. The worst EJC Gala Show, I think. I've now seen the last... No, I didn't see the EJC show in the public show in Munich.
Right.
So I've now seen 18
EJC
Gala shows, and this was by far the worst one for many reasons.
Right.
And so, in this episode where we talk about the EJC Gala Show, I don't want to be bagging on anyone because, like I say, I don't want to be criticising anyone. It's not anybody individual their fault what happened, but it's sort of like this cloud of decisions that were made.
Yeah.
Each one of them not good for the show that we finally had.
Yes. I think of all the people who go to an EJC, the Gala Show always is kind of like their pinnacle. Is that what they are looking for all the whole week through, because it's going to be the highlight show of the week.
All right, that can be our decision number one. Should the Gala Show be the highlight show of the whole week? In this case, this was the only ticketed show. Yes. Like in Toulouse, your first EJC, they had four, they had the Gala Show plus four special shows, and each one of them was ticketed, and they did it lots of times.
Yes.
They did each one was 4 or 5 times.
Week. Yeah.
So here's the one question: should the EJC culminate in the EJC Gala Show?
One Gala Show at the
end?
end.
I don't think it should. I think the Gala Show should be maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, and of course the people who are only there for the weekend don't get to see it. But I think it would be much better if, and I was talking to Wes Peden about this, and he's saying the only reason he could take part in the fight night was because he wasn't in the Gala Show. But if he had been in the Gala Show, he wouldn't have been able to take part.
Of course.
Because that would have been the day after the fight night finals, and he would have wanted to be in bed. Florence, his girlfriend, was in the show, and she wasn't there at the fight night because she was making sure she was ready to go to bed afterwards, like that.
Of course.
But that means there's people in the Gala Show like Tom Wall and Dan Holtzman and Florence and stuff. I think it'd be much better for those people to be in a gala show, maybe on Wednesday, and then afterwards you'll be like, hey, now do workshops with these people you know.
Yeah.
And then they could be, hey, you saw this person in the gala show, now they're going to have a fun turn in the open stage, or now they're going to do something on Renegade. You know, there's more you can take more advantage of them after they've been known as the gala show acts. Yeah.
Yes, I actually quite like the idea of having multiple gala shows, because this way you can do one for the town people, one for you can spread out the amount of people visiting the show, so that means you can restrict the audience size to a much smaller, more intimate tent as well.
Yeah,
like,
well, that's
more
what they do in the Brianza Convention. Brianza Convention.
Yes.
They have two gala shows. One is mostly townspeople and local people come along and see a show, and then the second one later on in the evening is mostly the jugglers who are there. You know, there's like 400 jugglers, and they get like, you know, fill up the tent. And of course, there is some crossover. Some jugglers come to the early show, but generally it's just and it's a totally different vibe. Like when I did my show, you know, when I was there, and also Wes and Patrick and Tony were there, like they were getting totally different applause points. I've mentioned that on the podcast before.
Yeah.
In Putui in 2005, there was no single gala show for the jugglers. There was a public show, which they had in a small theatre, which they invited people from the town to come and see. Come and see this juggling show. And again, there were a few jugglers there, but it was mostly local people. I performed in that show. But then the artists who were invited to perform in that show, to make sure that all the jugglers could see them, they were just asked to perform their act in various open stages throughout the week. So every open stage would have like an EJC gala show level of performer as the finale act, or at some point in the act, if they weren't suitable for a finale act. That's it. So there you go. There's a question. Should it be that way? It was, but this turned out to be the final event. We didn't see the games because, you know, we were packing our tent up and things like that, and missed it.
The weather kind of thing.
And everything culminated towards this one event, and it was such a letdown for most people that somebody, I can't remember who actually suggested it, just said, hey, just consider, or just in your brain think that the convention ended like after the fight night on the Friday evening. You know, fight night finished, there's maybe a Renegade later or whatever, you know, some bits and pieces, everyone hanging out, and then that was for us mostly the end of the EJC, because then the next morning we got up, packed our tent, left the site, went into town, had some lunch, came back. We only came back to say, like, to, you know, see the gala show, and immediately after the gala show we immediately just went and hung out with my parents, had a few drinks, and then said goodbye to a few people and left. We did come back on Sunday again to hang out with my parents, but it would have been better that way. But it shouldn't feel that way. It shouldn't be that, like, the last experience that you have of the EJC in this case was bad, and we all wanted it to block it out of our minds. I think the problem with this is that because of it is at the end of the convention, and it is one show, it's
like
a ticketed show,
it's like the hype that's being built up. Like over the week we've seen how many four open stages.
We hadn't. We saw one open stage.
There were.
I think there were 5 open stages.
There were 4 or 5 open stages.
There was Monday to Friday.
And some of these shows obviously had a really high level. And then the goal of the gala show is kind of to top all that. To make the best show for a huge amount of jugglers audience.
That is a question to ask. Should there be a gala show, and should it be the final event of the convention? Should it be the culmination of the convention?
Yes.
I would suggest, yes, there should be a gala show, but it shouldn't always be. It shouldn't be by default the final thing that everybody sees at the convention. I think the games are a good one. Maybe a parade. Like, it could even just be an open stage, or like a special farewell show or something like that. And it doesn't have to take up the main part of everybody's final weekend. It doesn't have to be like, oh, you should be clearing your tents by now, but you can't be clearing your tents because there's a gala show and you don't want to miss the gala show because you paid extra for the ticket, or that you have a ticket for this. It feels like you should be going there. So less pressure on a gala show. They could have just done it 3 times in the week, like, you know, like Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, and Thursday afternoon, and everyone would have got a chance to see it.
True.
All right then, next question. Here's an issue that we had, was it was moved from the big top into the main juggling hall.
Well, for me that wasn't so much of an issue, but
no, it created some issues.
Created issues that would have been other issues if it would have been in the big tent.
Here's the thing. I don't think this show, again, maybe people who haven't been at the EJC and didn't realise that maybe don't appreciate how bad the show was. It was, like I say, it's so bad that we didn't want to talk about it on the vlog, and it was so bad that we got sick of everybody talking about it afterwards, because it was awful. And again, I don't want to bring this back to anybody's one's decision, but one of the things that they were up against it was moved due to safety reasons, because there were storms coming from the big top into the main hall. Now, it was a last minute thing. Maybe there should have been contingency plans drawn up to say, if it can't happen in the big top, what are we going to do? But the layout that they had of the audience in the big top, in the main hall, because it was just in a big sports hall, it was just in a big, arena.
Yeah.
Not arena, what do you call it? Like a big convention space or display.
Yeah,
there was nothing there. It was just
fair,
a big. It was just a
farmer's fair.
Yeah, it was just a big concrete floor.
Yeah.
And they had to set up a stage, had to set up the lighting, had to set up the music.
Which for the amount of time,
really good job.
They did a good job.
Really great job of that. However, one position I do think there should be at an EJC is stage setup and audience setup consultant. People who know what they're doing, and the people who are there, obviously, again, they think, we'll put it down at one end, and then everyone can sit, and everyone can face in the same direction.
A lot of space for people to sit.
Yeah, lots of people can sit a long way back, and we can have lots and lots of people sitting on the floor, and then lots of people sitting on seats at the back, and then maybe some benches, and then people standing at the back if needed. Now, that's great, because a lot of people are then looking in one direction. However, this is something that I mentioned a few times, and people agreed with me, that energy in a show doesn't happen by accident. Energy in an audience has to be planned, or it doesn't have to be planned, but if you leave it, it can be created. Energy is created, not assumed. And I'm not saying energy in the audience, it depends on anything happening in the show, but if there is to be energy in the audience, there has to be an awareness of what the audience wants, what they want to be looking at, and what's, what it feels like to be in the audience. And to feel like to be in the audience isn't just having the best view of the stage. Now, here's the reason why the open stages always have a great energy. It's because there's too many people to fit into the tent. Everyone is cramped up really close to the front of the tent, to the front of the stage.
Yeah.
It's then person, body, like crammed in there.
Yeah.
Like, you remember last year at the EJC, no, not last year, at the EJC in Lublin 2 years ago, when they're like, hey, West Peden's having a show, this is his only show, and there's this massive long queue, and we weren't in the queue, so we kind of vlogged like all the people going to the into the tent, and we're like, no way is everyone going to fit into that tent. And you know what? They crammed people in.
Yeah, everybody fit in.
In the end, we did have to watch it through a black curtain, like a semi-transparent thing.
In other ways, not ideal stage design.
No, it wasn't the ideal stage design, but they crammed people in, and oh my goodness, the energy in that show, in the Pity Patter Hoffen show, there's gonna be energy there if you cram that many people into a small enough area. Now, we'd done the fight night the night before, and lots of people, again, we left a lot of this out of the vlog because we didn't have time to talk about this kind of thing. But, I think I left one little bit. People were saying, where's the audience going to sit? Where's the fight night going to happen? And where's the audience going to sit? And I was pretty much going, right, look, I can't make that decision now because I don't know how many people are going to be here.
Yeah.
I don't know what size the arena is going to be for people to play combat.
Yep.
But I knew that 15 minutes beforehand, I was going to be the annoying shouty guy who was going to tell people where to stand and where to sit. And I told Martin, this is not your job. Martin was the host, he was going to be doing the announcing,
so
and
he was going to keep the positive.
Yeah, he was going to be positive energy, but you need somebody who is not the host of the show, who is not a performer in the show, who is also not a manager of the show, but who is the kind of audience director in this kind of thing. And this is not needed in an open stage show because everyone just knows what to do with an open stage show. You open the sides, everyone rushes in, and everyone's ready to go. Yeah. Everyone's sitting as close as possible because they know they have to, because they know it's going to be packed. But in a ticketed show, that's not what people do, because everyone coming into this show, into the Gala Show, they were just wandering in, looking around, here's some space on the floor, sitting down, and that was it. They were now in their position, and the next people who came in were like, I'll sit here, I guess, and they sat in a space, and the next people come in, I'll sit here, I guess. And the stewards did a good job of getting everyone into the tent. Not into the tent, in the hall for the Gala Show. But they didn't do a good enough job of making people sit near the front. Yeah.
So what you did in Fight Night was that you created this, like, you had all the people sitting, and then you got them all together. Yeah,
and I was saying, you people move forward, you people move forward, you people push back, you people are sitting in an exit, you're not allowed to sit there. And I know that I was a bit too harsh, and some of the stewards couldn't help out. I did apologise afterwards to some people, because I was too much of the guy who was wanting to be in charge and move people around. Yeah. But the energy in the fight night was amazing.
Yes.
Again, not everybody had a perfect view.
And not everybody could see it.
Not everybody could see it.
Totally.
And there was lots of people standing at the back, and the people said afterwards, like, I tried to come and see, but I couldn't, I couldn't see what was going on.
Yeah.
But that was it. So I had to make a call, like, is everybody here is everybody who could possibly want to see the fight night going to be able to see it? And I knew no, because we weren't doing it in a big top. We were doing it in a temporary location, a last minute location change in the hall.
Yeah.
And I had to make that decision, and I made the decision for good energy rather than everybody getting to see. Now that's a hard decision to make. That's a hard call to make.
And also, you didn't want to just have the whole, the complete hall blocked off by this event. You wanted some space for people to still juggle.
I wanted everybody who was within distance to be able to see it, and then past that distance. It's difficult to care about them, but you have to make hard calls.
Yes.
And the hard calls are, how many people will be able to see this show? Those people are going to have a really good energy, and it's about the energy. Now, street show people know this all the time, that once you start doing a street show, that's why it's called a circle show. It's not called a people standing in lines looking at you show. They call it circle show because the street performers will make up the front row. They'll get the kids in the side, they get other people to stand there. They draw a line on the thing, they make an outline, they build it up. And this is exactly what I did at the start of the fight night. You build it up. And the great thing about a circle show, and this is very, very, very important, this happens in the open stages, happens in circle shows, happens in circus shows, happens in all these different fight night events. You have people and they're looking at the stage. Now, if they're watching straight on, they see a backdrop. But if they're not watching straight on, they're looking across the middle of the stage and they're looking at other people looking at the show, smiling at what's happening in the show. Yeah. And that energy feeds off each other. People are in close together. Yeah. They're looking at each other. And that does not happen by accident. Somebody made a decision that in this gala show, lots of people are going to be looking at it and nobody's going to be watching from the side. And you're like, oh, that's good. Nobody's watching from the side. Everyone gets the same view. Everyone's watching straight on. Yeah. It feels like a good decision, but the energy isn't there.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was definitely a very big part. And then you had the issue of how close are people sitting.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I was amazed at one point, Florence, she dropped a ring and it rolled off the front of the stage and I'm like, oh, well, this doesn't matter. Somebody will be there to pass her ring back to her. Yeah. First of all, there wasn't anybody. There wasn't any stage technician at the front of the show, at the front of the stage to pick something up and take it back to them, which there should be during a juggling show. There should be someone there. If something rolls off the front of the stage, it should never, ever, ever be the person on stage, like the performer's job, to come onto the front of the stage, pick something, get something up and climb back onto the stage. That's what she did. She was like reaching down off the stage. It was not good for the energy of her act because already she was up against it with the energy of the audience and things like that. And I was like, oh, nobody's sitting close enough to the front of the stage. And that was boggled my mind that nobody was sitting up there close enough. Now, here's the thing at Berlin Juggling Convention, we have that theatre. When the front people, they're sitting in the orchestra pit. It's a great
design
theatre because everyone's really up close. So that's the thing. Now, here's another thing, a decision that they made at the EJC Gala Show was that, hey, we've got some space at the front. We're going to set that aside for volunteers. So volunteers can come down and sit at the front.
They get a premium view.
A premium view. You think that's a fantastic thing. And again, good idea. It's a great decision. However,
to say thank you.
But that can only work if, like you're in a theatre and already everybody else has a really good view of the stage. Yeah. And in this case, people did not have a really good view of the stage. People didn't already have a good view of the stage. And then not enough volunteers turned up. So instead of before the show saying, oh, there's actually loads more space at the front. Space for hundreds, like maybe 100 other people at the front of the show. So just imagine a massive show. It's already too big. You're already really far away from it. And this was made a lot worse once we got into the act. We'll talk about how this all compounded each other. But instead of somebody before the show starting, like before the host, before Dan Holtzman comes on and starts talking and introducing the show, hello, welcome to the show, where's everyone from, blah, blah. Before that happened, you need the stewards to say, there's now not enough volunteers here. Now there's a big gap at the front of the stage. Sorry, in front of the stage. Yeah. And we need to fill this up. So you could have got everyone in the audience just come like, everyone up, close up to the stage. You touch the front of the people touching the stage, or maybe like, of course, a gap for, fire reasons or safety reasons, or if somebody needs to move out, they can do that. Like everyone up, and then the people behind them scrunch up, and then the people behind them scrunch up, people behind them scrunch up, people behind them, and now there's a massive gap. So everyone on chairs, everyone lift your chair up and bring it forward 40 meters. Like if they'd have scrunched everyone up, the people sitting at the back would have been much closer. They could have been 40 meters closer to the stage. 40 meters is already too far away from the stage. stage, and they could have been 40 meters. They would have only been 40 meters away from the stage rather than 80 meters away from the stage. Yeah. It was way far. I talked to some people.
Was it 80 meters?
I just talked to people who were sitting on the front row of the chairs, and they couldn't see what was going on.
Oh, okay.
We were sitting 20 meters in front of them, 10 meters in front of them. Yeah. We were still 40 meters from the stage, and there was this thing where someone did something with a playing card. You didn't even realize what was going on. The show was too subtle.
Very subtle.
It was very subtle for the size of the stage.
So many subtle things.
So what happened is, the show began, Dan Holtzman started getting up on stage, and then loads of people realised, hey, there's loads more space in front of us. So loads of people at the front, got up and moved forward 10 metres.
Yep, and while the show was already going.
This was already during the show. I have video footage. I'm trying to video Dan Holtzman coming out on stage, and people are blocking me by getting up and going to get a better seat. While the show had already... the show was starting, so people's view of the start of the show was Dan Holtzman coming on stage, and then lots of people standing up and moving down into a better space, and you're like, oh, so now I could take their spot. So what had happened, nobody had scrunched up the audience, so it was already too spread out. Then there was too much gap in front, and then as the show started, the audience got more and more spread out. More and more spread out, and other people tried moving forward, but in the end, the people, we were all just really spread out. So the fact that if you wanted to, you could just stretch your legs out in front of you, put your bag behind your head, lay down, and just get some sleep during the show. Which I kind of did at one point. I stretched out and I talked to lots of other people who had just fallen asleep through the show. And one of the main reasons they'd fallen asleep was the show wasn't very good, but also never leave enough space for anybody to look around and go, oh, I could get some rest right now.
After 7 days of EJC, everybody will be exhausted.
Yes.
So every opportunity
to lay down.
And it was warm.
It was warm, yeah. It was too warm in there.
It was not enough air movement or whatever. Yeah. So it's the perfect situation for everybody just like off.
But again, you have to design it. Of course, theatres, the big top wouldn't have had this policy because everyone had been sitting upright. Everyone had been watching the same thing. There's other issues. I'm going to make a video about some of these things. We always say that the podcast is like the director's cut of the video. I am going to make a video of staging and crowd control, which will cover some of these things, but it's going to be more about the layout of some more general stuff.
But let me just tell people that the Gala Show tent, the seating, I have no idea who designed that seating, but it was not a person who ever sat in a row of foldy chairs before. It was so tight. Yeah. It was so uncomfortable.
But also the layout wasn't very good.
The layout was also
most of the tribunes on the sides you couldn't see the stage for. So each of the side there was probably space for maybe 400 people. 400 people on each one.
It was like a triangle of people sitting on one edge.
Yeah, it was like a triangle of 80 people sitting in a stand which was designed for 400 or whatever it was. I don't know. It was massive amounts and then loads of seats in the middle. Again,
so that would have had other issues.
There were already issues of people sitting in that theatre. You have this thing called what I like to call foot juggle of applause, where somebody is laying down and doing something with their foot or kicks something up and doing something subtle with their feet. Yeah. And the people on the first 3 rows clap. And then the people on the tribunes at the back, on these, the raised seating on the side and the back, they also clap. But a massive section in the middle can't do it. And it is purely to do with stage height. But let's not talk about that. That's a separate video. I'm going to make a video about that. Yeah. Anyway, so... so what happened, like I say, at the start of the show,
were able to
people spread out even more. Instead of them being compacted before the show starts, after the show starts, they spread out more. And then there was a break, and again, later on there was a break, and loads of people went out for the break and just didn't come back, because why would you for the second half of the show? So the second half was even quieter, even more sing. So all the way through, the energy, really up against it with the energy. Yeah. Now, this is also what happened. You can see it a bit in the vlog. I didn't want to leave too much of our reaction at the end, but you hear no applause. They come out and do bows. Each act comes out and they do some bows, and then Dan Holtzman, the host, was sort of like, and now we're all going to take a bow on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And he was saying 1, 2, 3 to almost silence, because everybody in the audience had stopped clapping by now, because we're so spread out that everybody felt like they were clapping in isolation. Now, if everyone is crammed in a long way, like at the end of the fight night, everyone's crammed in together, and we're like, please now give it up for this. And we did actually 3 rounds of applause, sort of like, give it up for West Eden for winning. And then they were like, and now the top 3, this, and now we're going to take a photo. And people were clapping throughout the entirety of it until I was like, right, see you next year in Finland, or if the EJC 2020. And I actually said, this is going to be the end of it. And people knew that if they kept clapping, they know when they're going to have to stop clapping. And they did, and it was crazy atmosphere, because people, if someone next to you was clapping, you're clapping. But when you spread out, it's harder to keep an audience clapping. So what they did is they all did a bow. people started clapping again for the bow, which is so weird to say this at an EJC, that people had already stopped clapping before they got to the bows, the people who were left in. And they did a bow, and then they all raised up again, and then the clapping stopped. And then Dan Holtzman says, and now let's take another bow. And then people had to start clapping for a second. It's crazy because, again, normally people are clapping for so long that they take 2 bows, then they all go off, the clapping's still going, then they all come back on, take another 2 bows, get off, behavior. And then people are still clapping. And it was just so weird.
It's just the whole energy in that show was super weird.
Yeah. No, but I'm saying all of these things come back down to where the people are sitting. We're too spread out and all looking in one direction, which was not at each other.
So difficult. Like I don't have perfect eyesight. Luke has much better eyesight than I have, and he had like the zoom lens that he could take photos and stuff.
But even with my 300mm zoom lens, I was still struggling to see some of the tricks that were going on. They were so subtle.
Yeah, so subtle. And I think it was a accumulation of all different things.
Unfortunately, we've just got to the end of section 1, which was audience layout and
we haven't even talked about the content.
I don't think it's bad to decide, hey, let's have everyone looking in the right direction, but everybody has to be close. And it's not bad to put a volunteer section, but that can't be at the expense of all the volunteers who don't show up. That can't ruin the show for everybody else, you know.
I don't. Maybe they all knew that they would have spots in the Gala Show.
Maybe the second Gala Show.
They were all busy, obviously.
Yeah, of course they were volunteering. There's lots of stuff going on. So but I had this before. Once when I was at the Dutch Juggling Convention, the year you didn't go, I think 2015 or whatever it was, 2014, 2015. Yeah. I was the host of the show, and at the start, Martin, who was organising the show, says, "All right, we've got all these seats on the side here that we're setting aside for the artists of the show. So you artists of the show, if you want to go out and sit them, these are your seats." And I said, no, they're not having those seats because the stage is too low. We've already had 2 shows where most of the audience can't see what's going on. We're not going to reserve people whose job it is to be putting on the show to take those seats away from people whose job it is to be watching the show. There's space at the back. Like, if everyone comes in, go around the outside of the building, come in the back. And you have to make those hard calls. You're trying to make everyone happy. You're like, oh, we'll make the volunteers happy, or make the artists of the show happy. Of course, reserve some seating for them, but don't have people at the front of the show looking at empty spaces.
This is often what happens in concerts that I go to, because
the front rows are for the sponsors and stuff.
So they have the tickets for companies or important people, and these people, you don't even understand how many of these tickets go to these people. So they can't join in every event that they get to. So you're standing on stage as
looking
the artist, looking at the front rows. I mean, not always all the front rows empty. But that also is not a nice feeling for.
Here's what football gets right and tennis gets wrong. Tennis, not in Wimbledon and some other places, but often they will have the most expensive boxes down at the sidelines at the front, or maybe behind the baseline, so people are getting that TV view looking forwards. What football does is say no, because the expensive seats, for the same reason, because they're given to sponsors and all this other kind of stuff, they're not going to be full. So football goes, we'll have hospitality boxes. So it's sort of like on that second tier.
Thing, they have a view out. They sit behind glass. And
all that kind of stuff. So tennis matches will be played, and most of the seats that you see in the cameras will be empty. And then you look up in the stands, and all the people who really care about it but can't afford the best seats, those bits are full. And in football, soccer, this is, I guess with American football as well, all of those seats are down the front for people to just generally have. Of course, they're more expensive, but it's for the passionate fans get those ones, and the sponsors get the boxes. So that's another thing.
Another example of this kind of crowd control is if you are in a comedy show, and you are 5 people, you're not going to be laughing out loud so much. If you have a room of 100 people, everybody will just be.
But they have to be crammed in, and that's the host of the show. Okay, let's just get on to actually the running of the show.
Okay,
how did the show begin?
With the host?
No, before the show began, they played some music. Here's the issue. They're like, hey, what music shall we play before the show? Now, there's lots of music that you can play, thumping music, build-up music, lots of different kinds of energy. But they were like, hey, the show has to be moved here, and we're starting late, which wasn't a problem, because they told us that the show's going to be with the doors opening at 5:30.
Was fine, because we knew all the circumstances were totally
But they decided to play a song by Queen called "The Show Must Go On." And
the idea behind that is
again,
sense.
I appreciate the idea behind using a show called a piece of music called "The Show Must Go On." However, that's a song about Freddie Mercury dying of AIDS, and it's written. I think Brian May wrote it. He didn't write it himself, but Freddie Mercury really struggling to continue on being a public performer, a public persona and performing while dying of AIDS. Yeah. And the whole point is that actually Brian May is pretty much saying maybe the show doesn't have to go on. You've taken your turn. You don't need to keep putting yourself through this. Yeah. Take a bit of. I mean, this is my interpretation, or
but
whatever.
But this was your feeling that then, immediately when that played,
the music started coming on,
really
and I was just down. I was like, Freddie Mercury's dead. Don't start off a show with a piece of music which makes me sad that Freddie Mercury's not in the world and didn't, was taken from us by HIV/AIDS. Like, don't start the show that way. So we start off with a song about someone dying. Great. And then Dan Holtzman comes on the stage. Now, Dan Holtzman is a American comedy juggler. He comes on, immediately faces lots of people standing up and shuffling around and getting better quote unquote better seats, but making the show worse for everyone. And then he proceeds to, throughout the show, do like tricks which aren't suitable for the audience, and then American comedy material. And he might be a good performer in America, but he's the wrong performer. He's the wrong choice for an EJC Gala show. You need someone who everybody I can identify with. And Americans, unfortunately for European audiences, not so identifiable, like not so relatable. And he didn't help himself by a lot of material was quirky wordplay, which again could work for a British audience, but not for a European audience. Yeah,
it's a very international audience. So for lots of people, English is maybe their second or even third language. Yeah. So you can't really make these jokes that, first of all, the content is difficult to understand because I have no idea half the time what he was talking about. Yeah. I was really appalled by the way he presented everything. Yeah. It sounded like he was...
It was just written material, and he was reading off written material in exactly the same way for every line.
He wasn't engaged into it. He wasn't like it sounded very like step backwards, and just like he had a movie. He was like, and here comes up the thing, and then he does this.
Yeah, no reaction to no acknowledgement of what's going on in the show, what the energy levels were in the show. He was like, well, I just felt like I'll just keep doing my thing, just keep plodding through it.
Apparently in the second show he changed little bits around.
Yes, but that's already too late for the 1,000 people in the 2,000 people in the first show.
We don't know
or whatever
how the second show was then. But
the other thing is, like, say, his material. He was doing this thing about, and how many is this and stuff. And he says, that doesn't say much for our public schools. And I'm like, whose public schools? You're making jokes about the American education system. First of all, even if you understand that there's something called public schools and private schools, in the UK it's the other way around. We call what in America they call private schools, which are paid schools that you pay to go to. In English we call them public schools. Then you have like the comprehensive state schools. Yeah. So he was talking about state education, not private education. But by saying public schools, he is talking about the states, but whereas in the UK it's the other way around. But also, like, jokes about how bad kids are educated these days doesn't go down that well for Germans and Dutch people and stuff, where the school systems are like pretty good.
It's working. It's not great.
It's not great. But nobody. It's not a topic of how bad children's education isn't a relatable subject. And then he was talking about something like the 12-step program, which is like an Alcoholics Anonymous kind of thing. And I was like, what? Like, nobody knows what the 12-step program is. Like, I know about what the 12-step program is purely from listening to like stand-up comedians talk about it, and maybe you see it in some movies sometime.
I have no relation to it. I have no idea.
Well, the first step is admitting you have a problem. The second, that kind of stuff. That's what he was talking about with 12 steps.
In the context of a juggling show, I don't know.
So, unrelatable, bad delivery of jokes which don't work, didn't contribute to the energy of the audience, was sometimes difficult to understand just the names that he was announcing. And then after the show, but there's a thing that you always got to know, and this is a hosting thing and a stage technician thing. Again, I'm not blaming anyone, because people are trying to do their jobs good and quickly and briskly. Yeah. So an act goes off stage, and then the host of the show goes, that was let's say a name of somebody. That was Massa. Okay, so Massa did some placement. Yeah. So that was Massa, and everybody claps and stuff like that. And when he goes off and he says, and then he'll say again, please give it one more time for Massa. And he'll put his hand out to the side of the show to say he's backstage, make sure you can hear us, or something like that. And then somebody comes out on stage, and you think it's Massa coming back on stage for another big applause because he got a great response. Yeah. But it isn't. It's the stage technicians coming out on stage to start clearing something away from off the stage. Now, it's a small thing, but it's a mistake because the stage technician's like, oh, now, like, the act is off. Now it's my job to go on. So every time I host a show, I always say to the stage technicians, don't come out on stage at all until there's nobody clapping in the audience and I'm into the next bit. Like, I'll fill for you to do that. But the worst thing, and I've seen this happen so many times, and you see it in some videos, I've seen it in Berlin conventions all the time, that someone will come out on stage, do the act, come off, and then they'll be, please give it once again for this. And then, like, I remember, like, Jochen and Tina or something coming out on stage going, oh, and they're like, because now the whole audience is like continuing their standing ovation for someone like, say, Felix has done his ball sticks or something. They come out and like, oh no, and they go back, and then the person as you want to do. So don't let them on. Again, they're trying to do a good job.
Yes.
We understand the decision that they've made, but it's the wrong decision. Always make sure that until after the audience is finished giving applause, the only people on stage are the host of the show and the act that they're still applauding. Again, it's just a weird thing, but it does kill the energy when you think that you're... some
children are being slaughtered.
Kids are screaming here. It kills the energy when you think you're now clapping again for the person, you want to show them your appreciation, and then some random people come on stage like, wait, that's not Massa. I didn't want to give him a round of applause or a standing ovation. It was some other... Like, who are these guys? So again, it's just a small thing, but it makes a difference to the show.
Yes, it does.
So let's run through some of these acts.
Yeah.
All right, the first act that came out was Matt Tiffany. Now, Matt was up against it because already people had to listen to a song about someone dying. And then Dan Holtzman did zero crowd work or zero energy management of the audience. And then it was sort of like, and now Matthew Tiffany. And he was the wrong act to put on. You want to start the show with a fast pace, lots of music, lots of big tricks.
You wanted Massa at the beginning.
No, I wanted... we'll get on to what I actually wanted from the show. You don't want Matthew Tiffany to start the show. Second act, he would have been great. No problem with him being a second act. He did a good job. He actually won the audience over. Like, he was like, he was playing his sort of like character. You know, some of the things he did, I was like, well, you could probably moved on a bit quicker with that and just got on with it. But he did the tricks. He did a good job. But he was at the wrong point of the show. Now, if you're wanting to pick a British juggler to represent British juggling on stage, nothing wrong with Matt Tiffany. Just get him up there. He will win over the audience by the end of the show. He will do a good job.
He's a sympathetic guy.
Yep.
Does great stuff.
And he's doing like his, he's like, oh no, I'm not going to do club juggling because Wes Peden did some club juggling or whatever. It's fine to do that kind of thing. But just at the wrong place in the show. Next up, Florence doing her ring juggling routine. Hoops. Sorry, not ring juggling, hoops. And again, a nice routine, but that is a fifth act of a show. So you've had some fast-paced stuff, you have some high-energy stuff, and now this is like the quirky, weird one with weird music, with weird tricks.
The little bit where the audience like calms down
a bit,
little. But it's still amazed because
the tricks are really nice.
It's cool. I've seen it now about 3 times.
Oh, just want to say that people were sitting so far away from her that they didn't know if she was a boy or he was a girl. Like, because
really?
Because they were like, oh, I didn't see, and it was Florence, and Florence could be either male or a female. I wasn't sure if it's Florence, male or Florence female, and she's got like short hair. Yeah.
Oh no!
So that's how far away you couldn't even tell the gender of some of the people performing. Yeah. So again, not a bad act. Would have been a perfectly fine act. But
we've seen her in other settings. And,
well, here's the thing. Both of these performers were in a show that Rosie, who organised this EJC gala, she put on last year. And at the Catch Festival. We saw the Catch Festival show. It was great.
It was a small festival, and it had a little gala show. Yep. And it was
like 4 of the people in this show. 4 or 5 of the people in the show were actually in that gala show of the Catch last year. And it was a perfectly fine. It was actually a really good show. Chris Creamer. I see. So Robin Dale was performing at that convention, but not in the gala show. So 4 of them. 4 people. So of course, when Chris Kramer was finishing the show, and everyone knows that Chris Kramer is coming at the end of the show, all the energy is building up to Chris Kramer. It's like, all right, this is good. John Pete performed. Loz did a ring routine. Hoop routine. There was lots of fun stuff going on there.
Really nice. Was
it Luke did some cigar boxes, or was that part of the open stage?
I don't know. I don't remember. But it was a good, solid. Small convention gala show.
No, if that had been the gala show this time out, if the catch juggling show had been the gala show here, everyone would have loved it. It would have been fantastic.
Yes.
The energy would have been there. Loz would have been much better than Dan Holtzman. She was, because all her bits and routines, she hosted really well. She worked with the crowd, got the energy going. She was great.
She's like a very upbeat person.
R2 was in it. He was doing the rings as well,
R2,
like that. So again, really, really good selection.
True. If that was
if Rosie had just done the same show again, it would have been great. You would have seen like three or four of the same acts, and it would all been good. So next up was it a science thing or something like that? Was it the science guys?
Yeah, Ben and Fred. I have no idea.
Ben and Fred. This is when we left the show.
Yeah, it was warm. And it was...
Yeah, and we can do it. Let me quickly have a look at some other people. Yeah, I think then no, there was 4 acts. Oh, here's the other thing. They said, we've got 8 acts in the show. Now, my brain, and here's the thing that I want to talk about energy-wise. My brain was like, tick, 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 8 acts. Now, here's the thing. The IRC show had like 8 or 10 acts or something. Yeah. And I was like, that's great. We got through all the acts in like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
The open stage that we saw had like 11 acts, and we got through that in like an hour and 15 minutes. I'm thinking, 8 acts. This is great. We're going to be out of here in about an hour and 15 minutes. That's what my brain was telling me. But Matt Tiffany started off, and his show is like a 15-minute long because there's lots of tricks, lots of talking, lots of setup and stuff. Yeah, and then we had Florence, and then Ben and Fred. Ben and Fred was like, they did this like science piece, and we walked out of this because it was just suddenly a voiceover of people talking about, atoms and stuff like that.
And when it started off, it was like this school-based, like school-level kind of presentation juggling.
Here is a comment from Tom Wall, who was in the show.
Yeah.
People saying, what were your favourite acts of the convention? A Facebook thread, I think on the EJC Facebook group. He said, Tom Wall, Ben and Fred. Seriously, one of the best examples of a polished and bookable science show I've ever seen. Okay, I believe Tom Wall, even though I didn't see the show. I'm going to take Tom Wall on his word because he does these science shows, he does library shows, he does school shows. This is the kind of thing that they do in America. Yeah. Is that there's these different styles of shows that you get booked for, and if you start getting booked on one of these library shows, who was it we were talking about? Was it Brie?
Yeah, Brie.
She was doing library shows. She'd done a whole juggling circus reading thing, and I've talked to lots of these American jugglers who do this. They get a show format that works for this. I mean, the Gandinis do it. They have shows
and
which work in this. Yeah, Jay Gilligan does a library show.
Aubrey.
You get science shows and stuff, but those aren't shows for the EJC Gala Show.
I think this like I have actually about this Gala Show, I have one major point to make, which is this was a perfect corporate show.
Yep.
These are all acts that work really, really well for normal audience people who are not jugglers.
If this was, and we'll get into some more of these acts later, another 2 or 3 of these acts later, if this was a showcase of like, here's British juggling acts for your corporate event, like if it was a showcase sort of like, do you have a conference? Do you have an education conference? Do you have this kind of agency, that kind of agency?
Do you have a school event?
Yeah, do you have a school event? Do you have a college event? Do you have all these different kind of things? Come along, and here are the best sequences of acts which you could have. You could take one of these acts and put it in your event. Yeah. Like if you're having this again, get the Bar Flair boys who are in that second show in the second half, or get the Swing Circus. Yeah, Swing Circus comes out. Loz James, Lana Williams, Pascal Hearing, Stephen Salinger, Rhiannon Cave Walker, and Sam Haig. I think there was actually only 5 of them. This is 6 or something. But I think there was only 5 of them in the show. And it started off, and I was like, some people are doing some dancing, some swing dancing, and then there's some people doing hand balancing on the front, and then there's a seer wheel, and I was like, great, this is the seer wheel act, hand balancing the seer wheel. And we saw some hand balancing, and then we saw some seer wheel, which was both of them fine, nothing amazing, but fine. Yeah. Good enough, probably, maybe for an open EJC open stage, but not more than that.
Like a juggler, I don't consider myself like an amazing juggler and stuff, but I've seen a lot of shows by now, and this is all like everything appeared. Yeah. Everything that I've ever seen people do.
Yeah. I talked to someone and they were saying, I always knew what was going to happen next in all these shows. And then they're going to do that. And they did it. And then they're going to do that. And then they did it. They'll probably drop on this trick. And then they dropped on that trick because you kind of knew the level of it like that. So, but then they did the seer wheel, and then they're like, and now they took that away. And then other people started doing stuff, and then Loz did pretty much the hoop routine that she did last year at the Catch Festival, which was really good because it had upbeat music and there was a lot of energy. Good. And she did it to the wrong music. And then people came on and did some more dancing, and then there was some more stuff, and then they ended up with some club passing and more hoop and stuff. And it was too long. It was like 50. It felt like 15 minutes again. Yeah. And I was wanting the show to be over. So then what happened? I mean, I can't remember if that's what was the last act before the show. But then Dan Holtzman comes out on stage, this void of energy, and then says, "Now we're going to take a break, don't go anywhere. And I was like, well, what are we having a break for then? Like, if a break isn't for going outside and getting some air and going to the toilet and stretching our legs, why are we having a break? Why is it? And this was already after an hour of the show had gone past, and I was expecting this whole show to be over in an hour and 15 minutes. So after an hour and 25 minutes, the second half started, and we'd still only seen 4 acts. And we'd walked out on one of those acts and walked back in again because we were too warm. Yeah. And loads of people didn't come back in for it. And then we started off with some whip cracking, and apparently the music was so loud for the whip cracking that people at the back were so far away that they couldn't hear the whips cracking. Now, that's either the music was too loud and you couldn't hear the whips cracking, or that you were too far away and you couldn't hear the whips cracking. I think it's probably both, you know. No, Massa did his bit, didn't he? Massa came out, brought down the house with actually a good act, with big
there was
tricks.
Good energy at that point.
Big tricks, big energy tricks. We had some guys doing Robin, what was it? Let me see here as well. The Bar Flare boys, Chaz, Danik and Robin, who were not good enough at Bar Flare to be doing a Bar Flare show at the EJC.
This act wasn't suited for this kind of setup, because I could hardly see that they were pouring something into glasses.
It was too subtle. Yeah, it would be really good for a street show event where nobody in the audience is more than about 5 or 6 meters away from the front of the bar.
And then they were distributing these cocktails.
It took too long. We couldn't see it.
And several rounds of them. Yep. And always they only had time really to go in the first
row.
5
And there was another 80 meters of audience.
Yes. And nobody got a cocktail.
But again, skills-wise, they weren't there. We've seen at EJC shows like amazing bar flare acts. The winner of the IRC, the IJA competition in Russia last year, was a duo bar act, and they were better dancers than the swing circus. They were better flare jugglers than the Flare Boys, and they were better. Like, that one act was better than literally every single thing in this show. Of course, they won the gold medal because they were like really well and really polished. Yeah. I don't want to see a bar flare thing, which is maybe the 9th best bar flare show I've ever seen in EJC, and like it just wasn't good enough. And the worst thing is that Chaz and Robin and not Danik but another juggler had been in the alumni show. In the alumni show, and they killed it.
They had 2 acts. And it was so cool.
They did a balancing show, which is a bit like Patrick Elmert's balancing thing, you know, like a bit of Wes and Patrick stuff going on. And then they did a 2-ball routine, or a 6-ball, but among 3 people.
Really
and they just brought the house down. It was like the best act. That was probably the best act of the whole convention that I saw.
For you.
And they didn't do it in the Gala Show. If they'd have done that in the Gala Show, if that had been like the first act in the Gala Show, it would have been great. Why not book these people who are really good jugglers to do what they should be doing? Robin Dale is a really good juggler. Chaz is a really good juggler. I don't know Danik enough to know, but these are really good jugglers. Make them do their best juggling act, which isn't this act. It wasn't good enough. Whip cracking, what else do we have? We had and then I guess that brings us to Tom Wall at the end. He did something at the end, and Tom Wall was fine, but again, all of his juggling was a bit too subtle. Way too subtle.
It was a string or something, and it was so hard, so difficult to see.
Yeah, here's my mother's review of the show, because we actually said don't go and see the show, and my father was like, oh thank goodness, and we just went in and had a drink with them, and Hannah, our niece, who was there as well, but my mum, after we finished having some drinks with them and we went off to the hall to chat with some people, my mum said, this was the next day we found out, she said, I went back to see the show and I saw this act and didn't like it, sat through this, and then there was this guy came out and started fiddling with some string in his pocket, and I couldn't see what was happening, so I left. And I was like, well, you left during the final act, you know, if you'd have stayed like another 5 minutes you could have seen the show out. She was like, oh, I don't care, because it was so far away that it was so subtle that all she could see was somebody fiddling with some string, and didn't realise that he's doing this, like his opening trick is like this really intricate thing where you wind a string around a pole, and then as the pole goes down sideways it rotates around. Again, a great act for lots of people up close seeing these really subtle things. He does another one where there's a card, he holds a knife in his mouth, I think, and then balances the card on that, and then there's a pole to a spinning plate, and when the spinning plate spins, it spins the pole, and then that spins the card that's balancing on the thing, and it's a really good effect. It's like doing close-up magic for an arena. You can't do a close-up magic for an arena unless you've got big screens. And that brings me back to Almere, where they also had big tops and big audiences. I mean, of course, it's another level of organization and money and all this kind of stuff, but they knew that this was probably quite far away for some people, so they had screens up. And the show that
that was a good idea.
And the show that we went to see in the Big Top, I mean, the Jonglissimo show was based around screens and stuff. This was in Almere, not this one. When we could talk about Jonglissimo show here, because they were doing things right. they had these big screens up. But the Gandini show 4x4, their ballet with juggling screen, they didn't have the big screens up because you're like, oh no, it's ballet, this is serious art, it can't be intermediated by big screens. But that was the one show where we were like, actually some of that was a bit subtle from where we were sitting, and we could have done with the big screens, but we didn't have the big screens in that show, you know.
Did not have the screens?
No, they didn't have. We had to look at it, and again, it was a bit too. That show was a bit too based on like being in a black box theatre rather than a big top.
Yeah, like overall the acts were fine and it was good.
No,
and
they weren't fine. Unfortunately, they weren't fine. They weren't that wasn't the best I've seen Loz doing her act. That wasn't the best I've seen Dale and Chaz juggle even at that convention. We'd seen Massa, he brought down the house, but he dropped a few times and didn't actually do some of his biggest tricks. Like some of his big tricks he didn't get to.
And it was
I know it's fine. What I'm saying is that we've seen him at like 2 or 3 other open stages, I remember he actually won the IJA stage competition, so I saw the video of that as well. So that was the last time I think I saw him, because he won it at the IJA last year. And the act that we hadn't seen that we actually did want to see was the final act, and in the end we couldn't even see it because it was too subtle.
Yeah.
Here's another thing. Too much balancing. Should we go through this?
So much balancing.
This was not a juggling show. This was a balancing show. So Dan Holtzman, as the host, did various balancing tricks.
Yes.
Also, after Massa had done a plate spinning act, followed it up with doing some plate spinning and bowl spinning. Was he spinning frisbees on one thing and then bowls on another thing? Don't follow Massa, the world's best plate spinning, with a worse plate spinning or bowl spinning act. Okay. Matthew Tiffany did like 2 or 3 different things where he balanced something.
But that's his show. That's
I know. Again, I'm not blaming any individual act. Not. Okay. The Bar Flair boys did this whole thing where they pretended balancing a pole on with a tray with some stuff on their face was difficult. We all knew it wasn't difficult because we were all jugglers and they weren't fooling us. But they tried to pretend that balancing stuff was difficult. Florence did some. She also balanced stuff on her head as well. Massa as well also did some balancing in his thing because he's plate spinning and he was balancing things in his thing, and Tom Wall finished off with balancing. So we had like at least 5, and maybe the Ben and Fred, the science guys or the science duo, I don't know, maybe they also did some balancing. I don't know if they did or not, but there was too much balancing. Now, okay, how many ring jugglers were there in the show? None. How many club jugglers were there in the show?
1.
No. Matthew Tiffany got out his clubs and says, oh, well, Wes Peden or John Glissimo have done some amazing juggling. I'm not going to bother. He got the clubs out and then he put them aside and didn't juggle them. How many Diabolists were there in the show?
Oh, no, nothing.
Nothing. Cigar boxes?
No.
Nothing. But we'd had 2 hoop acts and 4 balancing acts.
Yeah.
And then bar flair, there was some ball juggling.
Whip cracking.
Yeah, whip cracking. But then there was like 3 different people doing various balancing gentleman jugglery stuff. There was, and this is what I said afterwards. I was like, except for the plate spinning, I reckon I could do that show. Now that is me being a bit facetious to say that, like, I reckon I could do every trick that I saw in there, or I could not maybe do every trick, but I could learn all of those big tricks. The biggest tricks were Massa doing some plate spinning side swaps.
Probably 10% of the audience.
It felt like it, and I don't want to feel like. And I couldn't do like the only big tricks were like, of course, the
whip cracking. You can't do. Can you do whip
No,
cracking?
but I'm saying big tricks. The whip cracking tricks weren't big tricks.
Yeah.
They weren't big tricks. I mean,
they were corporate event
tricks, very safe, very perfect. Like, hey, we're having a Western show.
Way too much sex stuff.
Yeah, lots of being really sexy and stuff like that. But here's the thing: like, you think what was Matthew Tiffany's finale trick? He was doing his brun finish, and I do a version of that brun finish, and he's doing other things that I can't do. But like I say, it felt like it was at the level.
And I think this is the ring. In the EJC Gala Show. Jugglers
want to be blown away
and amazed by the level and the creativity or the whatever.
Oh, it started raining.
Yeah. We should wrap up soon.
We should wrap up soon. But here's the thing: I want to be blown away, and there was 3 big tricks in the entire show.
Yeah.
The Matthew Tiffany's finale trick, Massa doing some plate high throwy spinny, 3 plate juggling or something, and Florence doing 5 hoops. They were the only big tricks. Other jugglers had some tricks, but they didn't feel like big moments.
Yeah.
And you can't have 3 big moments in an EJC Gala show. Last year at the Gala show, the show was too long and there was some downtime in it. But like when Emil Dahl did his show, everybody was blown away. When other people were doing their shows, it was like these big things. People were trying big things. And you can't base a show around like 4 British jugglers and 4 international guest jugglers. And the international guests are doing very subtle balancing tricks, plate spinning, hoops and bullwhips, and then the local British jugglers doing, again, more balancing, things, bar flare, science juggling, and swing circus.
I always try to take away all the situations with being in the juggling hall and all this last minute stuff.
Yeah, they're disconnected.
It wouldn't have worked on
even in the big top. No,
it wouldn't have worked there either, because people would have been equally, if not further away.
Yeah, people would have been just about distance. It would have been darker. It might have been.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that.
The lighting.
Also, I don't want to get into the issues, because they were up against it with the lighting. Yes. But at one point, they kept on turning the lights down. It's sort of like, no, there's light already coming in. If you do something with glow hoops, turning the lights off doesn't make us see the glow hoops any better. It just makes it just more difficult to see, and it's already quite dark. So here's the thing: the show wasn't good enough. Not because any one act wasn't good enough to be in the show, even if I do think some of these acts weren't good enough to be in the show. But they were fine acts if you want to have a perfectly good bookable science show for school children or colleges or libraries or something, or whatever science fair that you're doing. Perfectly fine. But jugglers are not interested in quantum mechanics or particle physics, and
some of them are,
and I wouldn't expect them to be. Well, some of them are. I am, but the level that they were doing it wasn't even as good as sort of like the periodic videos or the whatever science YouTubing stuff that I like to see. And I don't want, if it's at the EJC, I want to be blown away. I want there to be and
I think everybody felt the same about this. Nobody felt like, it was the best show of the week.
Yeah, Massa could have blown us away, except I've seen his act 3 times before.
Yes.
And again, there's not a criticism. I have seen a lot of acts before. Sometimes the EJC show, we're like, oh, so they're just doing the Berlin Gala Show again. And sometimes what it feels like when you go to the EJC, because Berlin Gala Show is always so good, so high level. Yes. But here's one of my criticisms, or not criticism, what this EJC felt like for me. It felt 3 days too long, because it didn't feel like a really good EJC. It felt like a really good British juggling convention extended out from 5 days out to 9 days.
And for 4,500 people.
Yes, extended out from 700 people, however many people. Say there's 10 times as many people at this convention than at BJC, this EJC. Yeah. So it feels like it's a longer, bigger British juggling convention, and if this had been a British juggling convention, it would have been great. Yep. The Gala Show would have been fine, because we're getting to see some local people we know. It would have been in a nicer theatre. Everyone would fit into one big theatre, like they do at these British juggling shows. Everyone can fit into one theatre. They always hire a big theatre, and everyone fits in, and everyone sees the show at the same time. Oh, I forgot another thing to do with the energy at the start of the show. And they even said it's a great British tradition.
Oh yeah,
to have balloons in the audience. They have loads of balloons. Normally, it's an amazing experience at the start of a British Juggling Convention Gala Show. Everyone brings along balloons. Everyone blows up balloons. There's the balloon convention people who've blown up balloons. There's loads of things go. People shooting stuff off. It's an amazing experience to be at the start of a British Juggling Convention Gala Show. It's balloons everywhere. People are cheering. Everyone's going for it. And then they say, okay, the show is going to start in 30 seconds. And there's this amazing experience of everybody popping all of the balloons, because we want nobody to be fiddling with the balloons and getting in the way. So it's this big thing, bang, 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 like that. And then the lights go down and the show begins, and everyone's into it. Everybody knows what's happening at a British Juggling Convention Gala Show with the balloons. And here, there was enough balloons for 400 people, except there was 2,000.
Yeah. They never came to us.
There wasn't a moment where big balloons are coming over and popping and pumping them.
We were still sitting. So we weren't even that far away.
And not enough balloons. And then they said, there was an announcement over the PA system saying, now, the great British tradition before the Gala Show, you've got to pop all the balloons. Sounds like a good thing if you know what it feels like to have 500 people popping 500 balloons in the space of about 15 seconds. It's an amazing, sounds like fireworks, great energy. Again, you think you're making the right thing to say, now everyone pop the balloons. But there was lots of people, including kids and, everybody there with some balloons, and they now pop all the balloons. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not going to pop the balloon. I kind of like this balloon. There's loads of space. It's not getting in the way because there's loads of space in front of me, loads of space behind me. I'll just put that balloon there, and then I've got a balloon for later. And then they come and make another announcement saying, please pop all the balloons. You've got to pop all the balloons. We can't start the show until you pop all the balloons. And then you're like, no, I want my balloon. It's like the classic thing. It's like, no, don't take away. Oh, Mum, Dad, I lost my balloon. The bad man popped the balloon. So the energy at the start of the show was a song about Freddie Mercury dying, and then telling lots of people, holding lots of people hostage. The show won't start until you destroy something that is bringing you joy. You don't want to have that expression of saying, destroy something that's bringing you joy, and then we'll start the show.
Yeah.
That's but they don't know that the British Juggling Convention is a joyful moment for everyone to pop the balloons.
Yeah.
People don't get that.
That's not a tradition.
It's not a tradition at the EJC. It is at the British Juggling Convention. That's why this point that I'm trying to make, that it felt like people trying to impose British Juggling Convention energy and standards and entertainment and vibes onto a European Juggling Convention, was the people in the European Juggling Convention Gala Show just want to be blown away.
Yeah.
And not by 8 acts in over 2 hours. They want 8 acts in an hour and 15 minutes, or 16 acts in 2 hours, like in Toulouse. Yeah. The show was way too long. Yeah. But there was never a moment that you're like bored at the moment. It was a 2-hour show, and I'm like, who thought a 2-hour show was a good length? And last year at the EJC they did way too many acts. You're just like, stop. Like, the shows, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning when the Gala Show is finishing. Loads of people have to go to the airport. So I'm not saying that there's lots of people miss the Gala Show because they put it on the final night. This is what I'm saying. They put the Gala Show on the final night of the convention, and my flight was at 7 o'clock in the morning, so I had to leave the site at 4 o'clock in the morning. And the Gala Show is finishing at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was like, and now time to party. It's like, well, I don't really have time to party. I've packed up my tent. I've just got to take it easy now because I don't want to fall asleep. So there wasn't a final night party because the Gala Show went on too long. Then put the Gala Show on Thursday night. Most people would have been there, and it wouldn't have monopolized everyone's final evening of the convention.
Making a good EJC is super, super, super difficult on many, many, many levels.
And here's the thing. Every single time you come across something, and this is what business culture is like, this is what company culture is like, this is what institutional culture is. Somebody does something, there's a problem that comes up. Anytime at the start of anything, a problem arrives and someone says, how are we going to solve it? And they solve the problem, and then they're like, great. And then the next time that problem comes up, this is what culture is that somebody says, oh, we already know the solution. This is how we fix it. Great. But then what happens in companies, they start off with 3 people, and they have like, oh, when 2 people disagree, how do we solve it? Oh, we just put the thing here on the whiteboard and the other person puts their answer on, and that's great. Yeah. And then the company gets to 20 things, and they're like, who's this person? Oh, we've just hired them. Oh, we don't know who they are. Oh, I'll come in. And that person was like, how do I solve this problem? Oh, this is how we solve it. And then you get to 100 people in the company, and you're still solving problems the way that the first 3 founders of the company do. This is what happens at juggling conventions as well. They go, well, how do we solve this? This is the way that we solve it. So when I'm saying the culture and the standards and the problem solving things that they do at the British Juggling Convention, when you transpose that from a 400 or 500, 600 person convention to a 4,000 person convention, they are solutions, but they're not the correct solutions for this thing. Like there is a culture of how things work at the European Juggling Conventions, which comes out of doing conventions for 1,000 to 4 or to 6,000, 1,000 to 6,000 things, and sometimes that culture doesn't fit. At the EJC in Munich, there was a big culture clash between the way that jugglers would solve problems and the way that the local fire safety people and
German bureaucracy
and the Ordnungsamt would solve people, and that's how I was in charge of the open stage venue, and it was almost closed down like 3 times because of this kind of thing. And so there can be culture clashes. And here it was kind of like, it was fine that they're like, hey, everybody, making announcements around the thing. Hey, everybody, this is what we're doing. Come on. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Announcements are good. And then the last day, they're like, here's a bit from the Bohemian Rhapsody. And you're like, oh, here's an important announcement. No, it isn't. It's just music playing through in the hall. Too loud and piercing. At the British Juggling Convention, singing Bohemian Rhapsody during the Renegade is a known thing. It becomes kind of like an anthem. It becomes like a fun thing that people do before shows. Somebody will say, is this the real life? And then other people, here's the just and you end up, and people will just do the entire Bohemian Rhapsody all the way through, knowing all the words and all the musical parts and headbanging at the right point. But that doesn't transpose onto a European juggling convention. It just annoys people to have piercing music playing through speakers when they're trying to chat with people on the last day of the gym. Again, nothing wrong with that for the audience or for the culture it comes from, but cultures transposing cultures, I don't know what the word is, and problem solving in one situation isn't always. So for the people at the British Juggling Convention, like Rosie was having I'm putting together a show. Last year I put together something for a convention for 200 people, and other times I've organised a show at the British Juggling Convention. So we want to mix a few of the top most professional British acts plus some European or some international guests and something like that, and we want a host who is good, Matthew Tiffany, who can experience, has some good spoken material, can entertain people by saying some funny stuff in between. But for an EJC, you can't do that. You need Mark's, what's his name? Mark, I forgot it. whoever was hosting the Diabolo battle. Now, the Diabolo battle is an event from the EJC, made for the EJC.
And this guy was from Bristol.
Yeah, that was him, yeah. Andy James? Loz James? I don't know. Anyway, it's Loz and Mark, the couple and stuff like that.
Mark James.
I think maybe Mark James. I don't know. So, Mark J. Yeah, probably. Yeah. For some reason I was thinking Mark J, but it's obviously Mark James. I say obviously. I'm probably getting that wrong too. So what happens is that he had an energy which was great for the Diabolo battle, and things were going wrong in the Diabolo battle, and he was just going through it like, oh, well, fine, that's fine. Oh, nobody knows what's going on. He was reading stuff out wrong. He was doing all kinds of bits and pieces. It won't be in there because they had already had that
this
all lined up.
Yeah.
But the Fight Night is an EJC event, which works really great because people, like, the energy is an EJC energy.
Yeah.
The fashion show is an EJC energy event. The open stages are an EJC event. The energy is there. The people are doing it. Like, it's Pola and Concha doing the EJCs. We know the culture of doing that. Like, over time, the decision-making, problem-solving...
And these are events that crystallized. Like, as these are the events that regularly work at EJCs.
Yeah, well, it's been a while since they had a fashion show because Anna's been, she popping out children and getting a business in order and stuff. Yeah,
but people loved the fashion show.
Yeah, like, we missed it because we were doing Diabolo because it clashed with the Diabolo battle. Yeah. But I wasn't going to miss the Diabolo battle.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot to think about. And again, none of these individual decisions would have been wrong in a correct context. But the context was wrong. The culture of the EJC did not match up with the Gala Show culture.
And I think this is like the overall feelings I have towards this EJC. It was an okay EJC. It was fine. It was good. The weather was like mostly good up until the last 2 days. It was nice. It was nothing wrong. And sure, the toilets and shower situation could have been better and stuff, but it was okay. It worked. But I feel this is a little bit like a stock market kind of thing. You can't.
They're not all going to be highs.
You can't always have the good ones, because if you then always have good ones, you kind of don't even. You can't really appreciate them anymore.
But it wasn't bad, except for the Gala Show. It wasn't bad.
No, it wasn't. I'm not saying it was bad.
But I wanted to be blown away more often, and all of the times I was blown away was like in the gym and fun events and things like that. We went to one open stage, and it was we were told that it was the worst open stage of all. That was our fault. We could have got to the other open stage. We could have done.
But like I think this EJC really lived by the jugglers themselves, by the jugglers creating...
Well, that's the culture of the EJC, so that's fine. Yeah. It works out that way.
This is why it was kind of like still good.
Yeah. But that's what happened in Patui as well. The open stages were really good because it was the only thing to do in the evenings because everything else was swamped out. Yeah. And that was the first time we ever had a fight night at EJC. There was lots of events which happened for the first time there. Because people were like, we've got to put on a show. Let's do the Eurovision Juggles contest that was ran for a few years. And then there was Mr. EJC where it was like a sexy what do you call it, not a sexy thing, but like you take your top off and everyone had to juggle 5 clubs, like, so to be Mr. EJC, or was it Mr. 5 Clubs EJC, I can't remember what it was, but there was that guy. I didn't take part in that, but I was doing these other things, taking part in these other things, which and some traditions started there which are still going to this day, you know, so some good stuff going on. Anyway, I just thought I would wrap it up there to say that this EJC, it's a pity that the final thing that everybody had in their minds when they were wrapping up the EJC and it left everyone down was literally the worst Gala show that I've seen at an EJC by a long way, and probably one of the worst one of the worst fitted shows to main shows to the culture of a festival, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it didn't fit.
I've seen some shows which are like, wow, that wasn't very good because their jugglers weren't very good. But the jugglers were trying to blow us away. The jugglers were trying to do something impressive. And here it didn't feel that way.
When they did the swing thing.
The swing dance stuff.
The first thing that they did, I could see them do swing dancing. But the music choice they had, music didn't fit the swing dancing. It felt like they were dancing to something totally different that only they could hear. Yeah. And the music that we could hear was this like nice jazzy, like nice, trumpets and saxophone music or whatever. So that it just wasn't... there was 2 things that did not quite align.
Here's the thing. Loz came from a circus background, Stephen came from the swing dance scene and went to circus school. They both realised that the combination of swing dance and circus was all kinds of awesome and embarked on a mission to spread that gospel word. But I didn't find that way. I didn't find the swing dance. I didn't find... Like, if I was at a swing dance convention and saw that dancing, I wouldn't be impressed. And if I was at circus or juggling convention and saw that juggling, I wouldn't be impressed. That's me saying that about Loz, who did the same routine in a show last year, and it killed. It went down really well. Yeah, and that's the thing I don't understand.
It's difficult.
I've seen her perform to like better music with that with the same skills. Like she hosted she was in the BJC show a few years ago in Perth, I think. I can't remember what it was. A few years ago, and it's great. It's high energy. It's a really good act, but that requires the lighting to be good and the music to be good. And this time it wasn't good. Yep. And then it was interrupted by some swing dancing that I didn't care about enough. I mean, I don't know how good the whip cracking was because I don't know enough about it to know if what I was seeing was good or not.
Loud.
Anyway, we've talked for an hour and 15 minutes here, and I think we've got to the heart of some of these things. Yeah. And I didn't want just to do this complaining, but like the decisions in isolation that are made aren't bad decisions, but they have to fit with the goal, or they have to fit with what's going on, and they didn't fit with what was going on. Yeah. The cultural fit was wrong.
I want to point out, organizing an EJC is a big endeavor, and it is a huge thing to do, and there are not many people who want to do it, and I totally understand why. Because it includes all these decisions that have to be made to in the end all come together to end up in a really great convention for everybody. And that is not an easy thing to achieve, and this is, I guess, also why people fear of organizing conventions. People's friendships and relationships has been broken because of that, and it is difficult to push through to find kind of a place, to find a venue, to organize it for thousands of people.
But here's the thing, to bring back to that cultural thing again, the main organizers of this EJC had never been to an EJC until they came to an EJC and presented their proposal to say, we want to organize the EJC. Jane and the Randalls and those guys had organised lots of British juggling conventions and do a good job of organising the British juggling conventions. But again, they hadn't been immersed in the culture of European juggling conventions before saying, we're going to do one of these things. So they came along with all of the problem solving and examples and, and structure and opinions and standards of a BJC, which they put on perfectly good BJCs. Again, it's nothing wrong with any of the BJCs, but I'm just saying, I do think that if you want to do an EJC, you've kind of got to be immersed. You need to be someone who's been immersed in a few EJCs first, and then, or at least have gone to an EJC before deciding to run one.
Because this way you also understand further what makes what are good things that happen at EJC and what are bad things that happen at EJC. So then you can take all the knowledge, all the wisdom.
That's what I say, and that's what I think some of these videos that I want to make about these things, about laying out audience play. Like if you've got a big top and a temporary stage, or you've even got any temporary stage in any venue at all, here's what you need to know. Please. And I think if I lay that out, it's not my knowledge, but every single time anybody ever starts putting up a temporary stage, it's not jugglers who are good at putting together shows and laying out audiences and working with audience energy. They're just like, oh, who's the experts? Oh, well, the people who are putting up the stage, they come in, and they're always people who do music festivals.
They are experts in putting up stages for different kinds of
not events. For juggling. And it's
juggling
a totally different
thing.
Juggling is
very specific.
Anyway, let's wrap it up there. We've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. I think we've solved all the problems. It all comes down to better audience control, don't hold people hostage until they put balloons, have a good host, and book acts which are truly spectacular and blow us away. I don't want the 3 spectacular moments in the show for me to think, I could do 2 of those 3 spectacular moments. Like, there was no ring juggling, no club juggling, no Diablo, and maybe one bit of ball juggling with Matt Tiffany, and then a science show, which I wasn't interested in. Like, blow me away. Like,
it is difficult.
Any of those open stage, even the open stage that we saw, would have been better than this one because it would have been over.
The bubble guy. I wanted the bubble guy in there.
The bubble guy would have blown people away. The club passes were fine. There was lots of weird stuff, even though that was the weird show. It was over in an hour and 10 minutes, and there was high energy. That's all I would have wanted from this show. I'd have perfectly fine if the best show that I saw, which was the Gala Show, had been that Wednesday, or the Tuesday or Wednesday open stage, which everyone agreed was the worst open stage. And I enjoyed like half of the acts. No, actually more than half the acts. I enjoyed it. It was
fun.
But there was some weird stuff. The woman who came on and just swore and then left again. I was
wasn't in joke, apparently.
I didn't understand what
the Irish.
Okay. All right, let's wrap it up there. I need to go over. You talk for a minute or two. I've got to go to patreon.com and we've got to thank some patrons.
Well, we have been travelling around afterwards a bit. which is nice.
You got a bit of a cold, it sounds like.
It sounds like I've got a bit of a cold.
And then I asked you to sit in it. Here we go, benefits. I owe lots of people. This is so good. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who is a new Patreon supporter. Hopefully you've gone back and listened to the 10 previous episodes, last one with Matt Hall, the previous ones that we've done. I'm trying to keep all of these as timeless as possible, so they're not like tied to any one moment.
Well, this one is tied to the EJC.
No, but like I say, I wanted to make it so even if you hadn't seen the EJC show, you can still understand what's going on and you learn the lesson. So I just want to say, let's go through to thank some of these people. So let's say thank Berit and Pierre and Johannes and Carla and Lance and Pedro and Jack and Noel and Antonio and Connor and Ricky and Alan, Cold Guy, Brian, John, Jakov, Status, Scott, Tom, Adam, Martin, Cohen, Luke, Matten, Don, Clifford, Mark, Bertalan, Virgil, Jesse, Andrew, Michael, and Pierre. You're all our $1 or $2 a month patrons.
Thank you so much.
And we really do appreciate it, knowing that we got more and more people listening here as well. Let's go.
We were able to get the Wi-Fi on the site to do the daily vlogs.
Yeah,
and
daily
stuff.
vlogs.
This all adds.
It helped us with the electricity and helped us with other things as well. Next year. Well, we'll talk about next year anyway. Let's in the close of the time. But also thanks to our $5 a month donors, Patreons. Thanks to Joseph, Robert, Harvey, Juliana. Hey, you're still giving me phone. D Hong Tae, Flo, Anonymous, Chris, Kathy, Simon. Thank you so much to you for all of your contributions. And then the top patrons. Thank you so much.
How they called the tiers there.
Oh yeah. So I've done the
Cascade.
What is it? There's the Cascade, 5 Up, and I think these are the clean finish ones. I can't remember exactly what it is. The 5 Up is the $5, and then the clean finish, which is the $10 a month or more, is James, Zach, Ben, Regelio, Mary, and Matt. Thank you so much for giving us $10 this month. I totally understand is after next month when we're not doing the vlogging, EJC vlogging, you want to reduce it down or whatever. Totally get that. If you want to drop down to $5 or $1 a month, totally get that. But hopefully you can spread the word and other people will get involved and become patrons, and we can do these podcasts weekly. I'd love to do weekly ones, which are a little bit shorter, and then we can get guests on.
More people on.
Yeah, a few more people on, and the idea being that about half of the podcast, 2 a month, will be Patreon exclusives, where we can get into the weeds and things like this, which is sort of a bit more intimate and a bit more opinionated. Yeah. And then the other half, maybe guests that we can talk to other people.
If you want to add to this or something, you can totally send us a topic that you want us to talk about.
$25. If you give us $25, we will talk about any topic you want, or try and get any guest. That's the kind of thing that we do. Or if $25, I'll do a video essay about the topic that you want, and I'll do that month, or get to it as soon as possible.
And I think the next big thing, of course, is going to be Berlin Convention. Is the next convention that we
in a month's time we'll do another
and then
convention
after that,
vlog.
I think it's probably going to be the next big thing that you're going to make.
Yeah,
it's probably the top 40 jugglers again.
Well, yeah, that'll be a big project. I'll do some other things between
but this
now
is going
and
to be
then. That will be a big project.
The EJC vlogging is like an epic thing to do, and the top 40 jugglers is also always really a big thing.
Yeah, so this month we had 17, since the start of the EJC, 17 extra patrons, so thank you very much.
This is amazing.
And an extra, it says the extra $61 in pledges. So anything else you want to say, or should we wrap it up there?
We wrap it up and have dinner.
Yes, we're going to have some food, because we've been going for an hour and 25. Thanks a lot for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Goodbye.